Now, there's one thing about Bob Iger, the Disney CEO, is that he's been a lot more talkative and direct to the fans over the course of the past 2 months, give or take, ever since he really came back on board as the official CEO of Disney after Bob Chapek got fired and let go by the Disney board. There's been a lot of things happening with Bob Iger. He's been responding to a lot of questions related to John and Dave's works on the Star Wars franchise and George returning and his response to movies being the new focus again. I mean, there's a lot of great things that Bob Iger is really trying to establish and really trying to fulfill. And that's an ongoing thing right now, is that Bob Iger is really trying to create his own footprint in his own Star Wars legacy, so to speak. And this is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future Star Wars updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. Now, given that there has been a lot of things happening since, of course, Bob Iger took over, we've had John and Dave getting all these different privileges, all these different promotions, and really taking over specific departments of Lucasfilm. We also know that George Lucas is already in the cards of taking over the story group by 2024, basically becoming the head of the story group. That's a big plan right now that's currently in the works. However, what's really very interesting to me is what Bob Iger had to say in response to a lot of media outlets asking if Disney would ever actually sell Star Wars, if they would ever sell Star Wars as a brand to a different studio. And he had a couple of things to say and confirmed a couple of things here and there. Now, obviously, a lot of fans would love Disney to sell Star Wars. Obviously, Bob Iger is going to deny all of this, but he did have a couple of things to say about it. So, with Disney CEO Bob Iger answering many questions lately related to Star Wars, he was recently questioned something very specific about the brand during the promotion of The Mandalorian Season 3. When questioned if Disney would ever consider selling Star Wars to another production or studio, Bob Iger actually had this to say to the world. Well, I certainly hope we don't reach that point, but as a contingency plan of ours, for sure, we have a mapped out backup plan on selling this brand if things went wrong for us and the brand was no longer profitable on our end. And we felt it would be better suited for a different production company for sure. If we had run these, of course, into, a lot of trouble. We had these discussions, and we do have backup plans just like this, so certain franchises can live on. When Iger was passed, of course, on to the next question and pressed on which production or studios he would sell Star Wars to if they did run into big trouble, financially speaking, of course, he stated the following. That is something I really can't answer and something I should never answer. But right now, we are trying our best with The Mandalorian and focusing on John and Dave's efforts with Ahsoka, and we have so much bright talent helping out and joining us with them to really expand the franchise. But as I said before, yes, we do have a contingency plan, and yes, we do have a list of studios that we would run to sell the brand to if we ever hit a brick wall with our goals not meeting expectations with the community. Now, I want to stop here real quick about what Bob Iger is saying. Now, I do find it a little strange that he is taking this long to actually respond about whether or not Disney would ever sell Star Wars. You would think he would give a flat-out answer like a hard no. Alright, leaving it at that. Goodbye. But he kind of keeps going on, he kind of keeps telling that there's a contingency plan, that there is a backup plan, that they do have studios in mind that they would sell Star Wars to. Is this something alarming for Disney running the show over at Lucasfilm? Who knows? You know, I know there's been a lot of people that have been thinking that Disney could very well sell Star Wars to a company like Apple, which I highly, highly doubt. I do not see that happening in a very long time. Who knows, though, what's going on in Bob Iger's mind, right? But what he did elaborate is that they are focusing on John and Dave's efforts. They're focusing on their work. They're focusing on George coming back. They're also focusing on the return of Star Wars movies. They basically are doubling down for the projects in this year and next year. That's going to be pretty much the key to creating a momentum of the franchise. And I know a lot of fans out there had different views on Chapter 19 of The Mandalorian, saying things like it felt like a mixture of The Mandalorian and Andor because it focused on Coruscant so much, and Dr. Pershing, all these different avenues. A lot of people are calling that episode Mandor. But anyways, Bob Iger giving a direct response here about whether or not they would ever sell Star Wars to a different studio. It is a little comforting to know at the very least that if they did run into trouble, they do have a backup plan to sell Star Wars to a different studio. Alright? Now that could either be good or bad, because let's look at it this way. I think a lot of studios would turn down that offer. I think a lot of studios wouldn't really know what to do with Star Wars. Because if you look at Disney, they're the biggest studio out there, right? They're huge. I mean, they're big. And I feel like even they, obviously, didn't know what to do with the brand in the very beginning. Bob Iger, of course, in the very beginning stages, thought that playing it safe was the right thing to go. And everything related to the franchise, of course, had a lot to do with kind of just keeping things at bay, not really taking any risks. So who knows? I mean, I think that if they were to sell it to anybody, it should be a very well-established studio that knows Star Wars well and that has passionate creators backed up behind them. But anyways, I digress. He goes on to conclude, alright, I would never in a million years hope that we reach that point, but what I'm saying is that yes, a contingency plan does exist for financial salvage if this brand did run into serious trouble for us. So far, we think that we are doing a great job with what we are about to unveil to the fans this year and next. We have so many series lined up and are beginning to stretch back into films again, and we are so happy to have George working with us again on these upcoming projects. It's been such a dream to work with him again, and I'm glad that we are cutting creative differences apart since the sequels. So I do kind of find it strange also that he suddenly is allowing George on board, and we've talked about this, what's been happening behind closed doors, how George Lucas is getting involved as a co-writer on different projects and also serving as an advisor in different areas as well, and it just goes to show you how desperate Disney has become. So, like I said before, it's a little comforting to know that there is a backup plan for Disney, but it's also something that could go very wrong, right? Studios, or any studio out there, may not ever want to pick up Star Wars if Disney did run into this scenario of selling the franchise. I know I've seen many people saying that they would love Disney to actually get sold, or Disney to sell Star Wars to a company like, for example, Netflix, or Apple, or all these different companies, which I don't really see happening at all. I really don't. I don't believe that's even near possible in the near future, maybe in the more distant future, if Star Wars really hit a brick wall like he says, but who knows, right? So anyways, guys, fill me in below in the comments what you all have to say about this, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
From night to moon, we hear them moans again. No.